Welcome back to Blind Truth. Today, get ready to be amazed because we're diving into the world of flight. We're exploring 15 of the craziest airplanes ever built that will make you question what can actually soar through the skies. Stick around, you won't want to miss this incredible lineup. Number 15, the Super Guppy. The first thing on the list is the Super Guppy. It's a really big airplane that looks like a fish. A company in the US called Aerospace Lines made it. It's used by NASA to carry really huge things for space missions. The Super Guppy comes from an older plane called the Pregnant Guppy, which came from another plane called the Boeing Strat Cruiser in the 1960s. They made the Guppy to carry really big parts for rockets and other space stuff. It's super big, 141 feet long and 156 feet wide. That's even bigger than some houses. Inside, it has a huge space to carry things, like parts for spacecraft. It's got 4 strong engines and can carry up to 54,000 pounds. This plane has been really important for moving important stuff for space missions, like the Saturn rockets and Apollo program modules. It shows how we've solved problems to move really heavy things from one place to another. This plane is all about serious work when it comes to moving big stuff. Number 14. Strata Launch. In the world of planes, there's one super impressive beast, the Strata Launch. It's not just big, it has the largest wings ever seen on an aircraft, stretching out a mind-blowing 385 feet, longer than a football field. They built it in California at the Mcdonnell Spaceport, and it's famous for its role in lots of cool aerospace stuff. Making this monster was a huge project that lots of companies and engineers worked on together. This special plane has 2 big bodies and 6 powerful engines made by Pratt & Whitney. It's like a flying platform for rockets, lifting them high into the sky before sending them off. This beast can take off carrying a weight of over 1.3 million pounds. But here's the craziest part. It's made to launch rockets into space. Imagine watching this huge plane soaring through the clouds, carrying rockets like it's no big deal. Number 13. Me-323 Gigant. During a time when most planes were not so big, the Me-323 Gigant was really huge. It was a German airplane made during World War II. It was much bigger than other planes back then. The German military wanted a strong plane to carry soldiers, gear, and even vehicles over long distances. This plane was built by a company called Messerschmitt AG. It was massive, with a wingspan over 180 feet and a length of nearly 92 feet. That's as big as some of the planes we see nowadays. But because it was so huge and heavy, it had some trouble performing well in the sky. It had 6 engines to help carry heavy things like tanks, artillery, and lots of soldiers. During the war, it mostly worked in the Eastern Front, helping the German army. But because it was so big, it was an easy target for enemies. This made it get damaged or destroyed a lot in battles. After the war ended, they stopped making this plane because it wasn't very good at staying safe in fights. Number 12. Antonov An-124. The An-124 is a really big cargo plane made by a Ukrainian company called Antonov. When it was first made, it was way better than any other cargo plane at that time. It was huge, with really wide wings and a long body. This plane was a lot bigger than most others, and it could carry really heavy stuff, up to 150 tons. That's like carrying huge military things, machines, and even things to help people in emergencies. It took its first flight in the early 1980s and got a lot of attention because it was so good. People didn't just like it because it was big, they liked it because it could work well in different places. Over the years, it did a lot of important jobs like moving big machines for building things, giving help to places hit by disasters, and helping in military jobs all around the world. Even though it did so much in the 1980s, making more of these planes became harder for the Soviet Union ended. But hey, fun fact, this plane holds records for carrying the heaviest thing ever in the air. That shows how much it could carry and how important it was for moving really big stuff around the world. Number 11. Boeing C17 Globemaster 3. The Globemaster 3 is a very strong airplane used by the United States Air Force. It's been super important for moving things since the 1990s. It's really big compared to other planes from that time. The Boeing C17, as it's also called, is huge, with a wingspan of almost 170 feet and a length of over 174 feet. This big size lets it carry up to 170,000 pounds of stuff, like military gear, soldiers, and help for people in need all around the world. It became a major player in 1991 and quickly proved it was a reliable workhorse for the US Air Force and other countries. It can move in tough places, like short or rough runways, reaching spots other planes can't. In 1993, it set 22 world records for dropping off cargo in the air. The plane has 4 strong engines called Pratt & Whitney F-17 PW100 engines. Each engine can push with about 40,000 pounds of force. It was a big help for the US in the Middle East during wars. They stopped making it in 2015, but lots of countries still use it because it's so good at helping with military stuff in modern times. Number 10. The Tupolev Tu-160. The Tupolev Tu-160, called the White Swan because it looks graceful, is a super-fast bomber made by the Soviet Union. It was made during the Cold War to keep up with the United States B-1 Lancer bomber program. The White Swan first flew in 1981. It's really big, more than 177 feet long and with wings that stretch about 182 feet. This size lets it carry lots of different weapons, like long-range missiles and bombs, both regular and nuclear. The plane has a special feature called a variable sweep wing. This lets the pilot change how the wings are angled to fly better at different speeds. It's super fast, going more than twice the speed of sound, and it's one of the quickest bombers ever made. Russia uses it a lot in their military because it can carry all sorts of precise weapons, both regular and nuclear. The original Tu-160 production stopped for a while after the Soviet Union ended, but Russia started making them again in the early 2000s. They made a newer version, the Tu-160 M2, which has better technology and weapons. This helps it be even more useful in today's warfare. Number 9. Boeing B52 Strata Fortress. The Boeing B52 Strata Fortress is a really famous military airplane. It's been around for a very long time, starting its job in the 1950s. The B52 has been super important for the United States Air Force. It's tough and can do a lot of different things to deal with problems around the world. People often call it BUFF, which stands for Big Ugly Fat Fella. This plane is huge. It's more than 159 feet long and has a wingspan of over 185 feet. That's why it gets attention wherever it goes. The B-52 can carry a bunch of different weapons, like bombs and missiles, both regular and nuclear ones. This makes it really powerful in fights and battles. It's got 8 powerful engines made by Pratt & Whitney. This helps it do its job for a long time without stopping. It can fly super fast, up to 650 miles per hour, and this helps it get past enemy defenses quickly. It's been part of big wars like the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and the more recent War on Terror. Even though it's been around for a while, people are still working to make it better and keep it up to date. The United States wants to keep using this plane because it's a big part of their military power. They're always making it better with new technology to make sure it stays strong in battles for a long time to come. Number 8. Dorer DX. The Dorer DX was a really big plane made in the 1920s. It was made by a German company called Dornier. This plane was huge, much bigger than others at that time. It had big wings and was longer than a football field. Imagine a plane that could fit 170 people inside. That's how big the DX was. It had lots of fancy rooms like a place to smoke, a dining area, a lounge, and even a deck where people could walk around. It was like a luxury hotel in the sky. In 1929, the DX did something amazing. It flew across the Atlantic Ocean. People didn't think such a big plane could do it, but it did and showed everyone it was possible. But even though it was impressive, the DX had some problems. It was really hard to take care of and cost a lot to maintain. Plus, the world was going through a tough time called the Great Depression, so they had to stop using the DX in the 1930s. So, while it was a big deal in its time, the DX couldn't keep going because it was too expensive and had some technical issues. But it definitely helped show that long flights over oceans were possible. Number 7. Boeing 747 Dreamlift. The Dreamlifter is a huge airplane made by Boeing. It's one of their biggest and best planes. It was made to carry big parts for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. This plane is special because it shows how Boeing keeps trying new things in making planes. The Dreamlifter's main body is changed from another Boeing plane, the 747-400. It's about 23.5 feet long and has wings that are more than 211 feet wide. That makes it one of the biggest cargo planes globally. It can carry really big stuff, up to 65,000 cubic feet, which is crucial for building Boeing's advanced planes. It started flying in 2007 and has been super helpful for Boeing's supply chain all over the world. The Dreamlifter has 4 strong engines made by General Electric. It can fly at a top speed of about 0.8 times the speed of sound. That helps it move big things quickly across long distances. Besides being super good at its job, it also has some cool things about it. It can hold the most stuff compared to any other plane, whether for business or military. Plus, it has a neat tail that swings open to make loading and unloading easier. It's a simple but really smart idea that makes everyone's job simpler. Number 6. Caproni TA60. The CA-60 Transsiberian was a big airplane made by an Italian guy named Gianni Caproni. It was meant to fly across the Atlantic Ocean and carry people. This plane was special because it had 8 engines and 3 sets of 3 wings each. But even though it seemed like a great idea, only one of these planes was ever made. It took its first flight in 1921 over Lake Maggiore. The plane was really heavy, weighing 57,000 pounds, and it had a big fuselage. The special thing about this plane was its 8 Liberty L12 V12 engines. These engines were super powerful, making 400 horsepower each. They were seen as really amazing technology back during the First World War. These engines were put in 2 groups of 4, with some in the front and some in the back of the wings. The middle part of the plane held the engines and had big propellers. The fuel tanks were on top of the cabin near the middle set of wings. This was a clever design. Sadly, during the second flight, the plane crashed into the water and broke apart. This accident made the project too expensive to keep going. Number 5. The Airbus Beluga XL. The Airbus Beluga XL is a super big plane made to carry really huge parts of other airplanes. It looks different with its big round top that people call the whale in the sky because it looks like a beluga whale. It's much bigger than the older Beluga ST. The new one is longer and wider, making it one of the biggest cargo planes around. It's about 207 feet long and has wings that stretch around 195 feet, so it can carry really big stuff easily. It can lift off while carrying up to 220 tons, which helps it move heavy things over long distances. Inside, it has a huge cargo space that can fit large airplane parts, like 2 or 350 wings at once. This helps transport these parts between different factories smoothly. To make sure it works well, it has strong Rolls-Royce engines that give it power to fly at more than 450 miles per hour for about 2,500 miles. This helps the Beluga XL travel long distances safely with its important cargo. Number 4. The Lockheed C5 Galaxy. The C5 Galaxy is a big airplane made by an American company called Lockheed. It was made for the Air Force to carry lots of heavy stuff over long distances. It can take tanks, helicopters, and even a special stealth fighter called the F-173 Nighthawk. Its main job is to quickly move soldiers and things for military missions, helping out during disasters, and doing good around the world. They started making it in the 1960s, and it had its first flight in 1968. Since then, it's been a really important part of the Air Force's ability to move things. It's so good at carrying stuff because it has strong engines, a special wing, and a big space inside to hold cargo. Its engines can make it go really fast, up to 593 miles per hour. The part where they put cargo is 121 feet long, 19 feet wide, and about 13.5 feet tall. That's as big as 6 Greyhound buses, or 2 big tanks. They named it Galaxy because it's great at carrying huge amounts of stuff. It even set records for carrying the heaviest cargo of any US military plane, over 135 tons. Number 3. The Spruce Goose. The big plane called the Spruce Goose was made by a guy named Howard Hughes. He was a rich and famous American who loved flying. He wanted to make a huge plane that could carry lots of stuff over the ocean during a time when there were lots of fights. The plane wasn't actually made of spruce wood, but mostly birch because during the war, there wasn't enough spruce wood. It was really big and needed to carry heavy things across long distances. Hughes and his company worked hard to design and build it, even though they faced many problems like not having enough materials because of the war. They built it in a big building in California. Finally, in 1947, it flew for the first time for a short distance and not very high. But even though it didn't fly far, it showed how well it was made. This plane was gigantic with wings longer than a football field, and it weighed as much as 200 elephants. It was a huge challenge for Hughes and his team to make it fly, but they did it. Number 2. The Caspian Sea Monster. The Caspian Sea Monster was a huge vehicle made by the Soviet Union during a time when they were rivals with the United States. It was really big and meant to move fast over water. It first flew in 1966, weighing about 540 tons and stretching about 300 feet long. It was so big that it became the largest of its kind. The person in charge, Rostislav Alexeyev, worked on it for 15 years. But in 1980, it crashed because of a mistake by the pilot. Thankfully, no one died, but the vehicle was too damaged to fix. Even though it was amazing, it didn't get used much because it was too big and complicated for the military to use easily. After the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union broke apart, this vehicle became forgotten, like a reminder of the past. Number 1. The Antonov An-225 Mraya. The An-225 Mraya is a huge airplane made during the Cold War in the 1980s. It was built in the Soviet Union by the Antonov design team. This airplane was made for the Soviet space program. Its name, Mraya, means dream in Ukrainian, showing how big the idea behind it was. It needed special technology to carry heavy things. It has 6 big engines, a wingspan of 290 feet, and a length of 275 feet. That makes it one of the biggest and heaviest planes ever made. At first, the An-225 helped the Soviet space program by carrying the Buran space shuttle and parts for big rockets. It set lots of records, moving super heavy stuff like a 189-ton generator and a 117-ton piece of equipment for an oil refinery. It flies using 6 powerful Progress D18 engines, each giving a thrust of about 52,000 pounds. These engines were made just for this plane and are a big reason why it works so well. After the Soviet Union ended, the An-225 had a hard time. It was parked and not used for a while, but later it got back in the air, working for Antonov Airlines. Check out our videos. See you next time.